bad partitions. Now, we're seeing a rise in talk of partition of the United States. And as far as that goes, that's a good thing. But it's really, boy, we're getting some really, really bad ideas regarding the breakup of the United States. Really bad ideas. And there's two key problems with partition proposals of the United States. And the first is regional sacralization and state sacralization. Now, regional sacralization is belief in things like the South or things like the Northeast, or belief in, taking the geography of the United States as something meaningful to be preserved, like dividing the United States up on the basis of geographic regions. Okay? So, now, what are countries? I mean, countries are of people. Okay? They're not... Countries exist by and for people, not dirt. Okay? So this sacralization, like ideas like the country of Cascadia, or the empty quarter, or... Right, kind of nonsense. That's not. These are geographically based partitions of the United States, and they're retarded, right? Because that's not what countries are. Now, if you want to draw a map and label geographic regions of the United States, okay, that's geography, but that's not. I mean, countries are, of course, affected by geography. That is true, but the geography is not the thing in itself. That's not why we have countries. We don't have countries in order to partition the world into geographic zones, right? They are ideological, racial, religious, or traditional, cultural, linguistic, blah 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 zones. Right? That's what they're for, right? And they are political units that represent this or that group, right? So geographic sacralization or dirt worshipping is one major problem in these partitions. The second major problem is state sacralization. And by state sacralization, I mean as in the 50 states of the U.S. Really provinces at this point, but... And the idea to have a partition on the basis of these 50 states, right? Now, to me, this is really dumb for two reasons. Well, they kind of tie into each other. Now, the first reason they're dumb is because these states don't correspond to the people, right? The people in Seattle, in the Seattle area, are not like the people in Eastern Washington, right? The people in Eastern Washington have more in common with people in Idaho than they do with people in Seattle, okay? And, of course, the people in the Seattle area have more to do with people in the Portland to Eugene area than they do with people in the rest of the state of Washington, okay? So these states do not, they do not correspond to they do not correspond to the political predispositions of the people or the religious predispositions of the people in those areas, or the economic, ideological predispositions. They're not the same nations, right? These are separate nations. Okay, Portland, the people around Portland are the same people as the people around Seattle, right? The people in Eastern Oregon are the same people as the people in Eastern Washington. Okay, so the states they do not correspond with reality that much, right? In fact, the states, they don't even correspond with geography. Okay, so they don't correspond with geographic reality. They don't correspond with political reality or any traits of the people reality, right? So they're shitty on both those grounds. But another reason it's dumb is because, well, we're talking about breaking up the United States. And this idea that, how do I put this? When you want to break up the United States, and your main argument for breaking up the United States is to point to a clause within the legal framework of the United States, which is that the states have the right to secede, that's kind of weak sauce. That's kind of like asking for a permit to protest. It's like, oh, we're going to break off from the United States, and we're allowed to according to what the United States says, right? Okay, well, that's kind of like, like you don't ask them, right? That's not. Do you not know what political separation means? Political separation means, fuck you to whatever the United States legal standard was. Okay? Whether or not it is legal or illegal to secede, what the fuck? When the United States, well, not the United States, but when the 13 colonies broke off from Britain, was there some sort of legal clause that they... No, it was totally illegal, right? Illegal, of course, within the context of British law, right? So this notion of like these legal arguments for secession, do you not know what political separation means? It means political separation. It means you form a new sovereign country, independent of the legal norms and traditions of the country that it came from. Technically speaking. Now, in reality, you form a new country, there's going to be a lot of carryover, but it's not carried over because the United States says so. That's just like what the people there have done and what they kind of know, right? But it's not. I think I'll just go back to that original analogy, right? You don't ask for a permit to protest. You don't ask for permission to leave. Okay, don't think that way, right? Because that's not actually leaving, right? If the whole justification for you leaving was based on a prior agreement with that which you're leaving from, that's not. I mean, first off, that seems like. First off, that's not really partition. That's not really forming a new country. If the very existence of your country is based on what some other country thinks, one. And two, well, I'll this is a little bit of a different thing. This is something that a lot of people listening to this may not really enjoy hearing, but it also perpetuates belief in the United States even after death. Like, people will still be referring to legal norms within the United States even after the United States is broken up, when that monster just needs to fucking die, and it needs to die and be remembered as the horrible thing that it was, right? But that's something else. So anyway, I just wanted to make this video to get this off my chest. I know that it's a good thing in general, that it's better to have all of these bullshit ideas of partition. Right? I saw one in Forbes magazine where there was some guy talking about New France. Right? The area around New Orleans is going to be called New France. I'm like, oh my god. Like, that area is full of blacks who don't speak French. Right? And racially, like, that area is part of the same region up along the Mississippi River that is majority black. Like, it's not, there is no New France. No, there's no New France. Right? Or forming a country out of, in the mountain west of the U.S. and calling it, like, the empty quarter. Like, no, people around the Denver, Colorado Springs, Pueblo, Cheyenne little belt there are not the same people as who live out in the sticks. Okay, these are completely different people with completely different religious and ideological views. They're not the same people. They're not the same people, okay? They're not part of the empty quarter. Right? Make your partitions more realistic. And so when I'm talking about partition, I'm thinking, okay, how do we make countries that represent the nations that exist in the United States, recognizing that the nations in the U.S. are not going to be, because the United States doesn't have national regions in the way the Soviet Union did, the United States is going to be a bit more like India, okay? in that you have Muslims and Hindus, Hindis, all scattered around with each other. And so what India had to do is they had, okay, this region roughly approximates to where Muslims are most concentrated, and so we'll say that this is the region for Muslims, Hindis out, Muslims in, to further solidify that majority, right? And that's what you're going to see in the United States, right? You're going to see, okay, libertarians represent, 5%, like real libertarians, real, right? Represent maybe 5 to 10% of the population. I don't know what the real numbers are. I know libertarians have estimates around 25% of the population is libertarian, right? But let's say like 5% of the population is libertarian. Okay, well, how much land mass and which land mass, land value, when we're dividing up counties, should the libertarians get? All right, so you figure out how much they should be set aside for them. This is the libertarian set aside, 1. And 2, where should the set aside be located? Probably somewhere in the Mountain West, right? Probably around Colorado, right? The people around Colorado Springs and Pueblo are probably going to be a bit more, prone to libertarian ideas than they would be to hard conservative ideas. So Colorado seems like a good area, mixture of left libertarian and right libertarian ideas, right, for a general libertarian state to be carved out of Colorado somewhere. Okay, that seems like a good idea. And so what we do is we say, all right, so this is going to be the territorial set aside for the libertarians, okay, and then now that you've established that set aside, well, now non-libertarians out, libertarians in. Right, that's what you do. And in order to do that, you're probably going to have some sort of undemocratic rule, because you're going to have to say, all right, this is the preset libertarian. Now, the problem is libertarians are spread all throughout the country. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to reconcentrate them into the new nations. Right? This is what was done with the formation of Israel. They had Jews spread out all throughout the world, and Zionism was a reconcentration of that. Hopefully, right, this project will end happier than that. Same thing happened with Pakistan and India, right? You had Muslims scattered throughout India, but they had to be reconcentrated into 2 new countries, Pakistan and Bangladesh. And that's what you're going to have to see. Now, and the reason we need to do that is so that we can get the countries right, get the nations right, and so now you can find, and it's a great, wonderful opportunity to finally have a true, a libertarian state, or if it goes anarcho-capitalist, a polycentric region, right? There's finally a chance to actually do that, right? You could get all the libertarian socialists to have a country, right? There's a great, wonderful historical opportunity to do all of these things instead of being hidebound to the sanctity of maintaining the territorial integrity of the state of Oregon and making sure that Portland and frickin' right, and making sure that Portland and Eastern Oregon are part of the same political unit, because heavens, we carve up Oregon. Or heavens, we carve up Illinois. No, Springfield must be in the same political unit as Chicago. Right? It is written in the heavens that the territorial integrity of Illinois must be preserved. Right? Fuck that shit. Open the mind. Open the mind to a new partition that goes beyond all the old 1700s, 1800s kind of ideas about the Union and the Compact and what they thought the law was, right? To the extent that the current government even upholds the Constitution anymore, which is kind of, we're gonna have strict legalistic reasons to partition the United States, even though the United States government doesn't abide by the Constitution anymore. We're gonna make sure to be strictly constitutional in our secession movements, right? So that's kind of a rambly video. These are just some things that I've wanted to say. I've wanted to get off my chest. also something to sort of point to people who say, hey, I have a dumb idea for the partition of the United States. We'll have this country be New France. We'll have this country be New Germany, see? And well, because like there's a lot of German people in Wisconsin, so that'll be New Germany. Or there's a bunch of people descended from Norwegians in Minnesota. Well, like, no, you moron. Don't, why so hidebound? Why so hidebound? You know, and I see all these partitions of I look at the Forbes partition and I'm looking at it like, okay, where's the Mormon country? Where's New Deseret? Okay? Now, on that Forbes partition, it was some stupid college kid project. On that Forbes partition, they did have, I will give them credit, they did recognize the mestizo racial state. They pointed to this, I guess they called New El Paso or some stupid name for it. But it was basically the mestizo racial state. So I'll give them credit for that. But even on that, it's like, dude, like 45% of mestizos support either going back to Mexico or breaking off from the U.S., okay? Aztlan, big, gross, right? It's a big country, like all of New Mexico, right? The El Paso region, okay? About half of Arizona, right? You know, the southern third of California, big mestizo racial state, okay? Like these kind of rinky-dink considerations about what exactly are the nations of the U.S. is so. Oh my God, it's so geographically based, it's so traditionally based, it's so state sanctity based, it's so bad, and to a degree, it's fucking fantasy based. I guess that would be the third one. It's fantasy based. New France, right? Like the Empty Quarter, Cascadia, right? Fantasy countries. Right, so it's not just regional, dirt worshipping, sacralization is a problem of these bad partitions. It's not just sacralization of the U.S. traditions and the integrity of Illinois, right? But it's also outright fantasy, right? Countries that have no referent. Now, it is true that there is no libertarian concentrated region in the U.S., right? And so that's why I say you need to set one up. You need to have territorial set-asides for ideological groups to then form a country. Okay? So that is true. What I am referring to does not exist. There is no libertarian states of America at this point. There is no New Europe at this point. There is no Aztlan at this point. Okay? But there are the seeds of those countries spread out throughout the United States. Okay? These countries that I propose, they're not fantasy-based. There really are a bunch of anarchist/communist/libertarian socialist types, enough to form a country, enough to form a reasonable country, right? Not many of those people in the U.S. at this point, so the region I would set aside for them would probably be around in Nevada, northern Nevada. But, the countries I propose, they all have some sort of basis in reality. They refer to some sort of demographic group, some ideological group, and some religious group. Okay? And the countries are the set-asides and the extent of the countries that I propose, take into account the value of the land. Like, for example, New Europe gets a lot of land, but it's not prime real estate, right? It's out in the middle of Montana and stuff. So it's not prime land. So it's a big area, but it's like rocks. So, okay, it's like living on the moon, right? And so there are certain countries that are like that definitely refer to a much larger political movement, like the Democratic States of America, and they get much smaller areas, but they get like New York City and New Jersey and stuff, right? So the partition, right, takes into account the value of land, right? Value of land based on, the demographic and ideological groups that comprise the United States, all right? Not bullshit geography, not bullshit, dirt worshipping, and not sacralization of the territorial integrity of Oklahoma, Right? Oh, you can't partition Oklahoma into a regional set aside for Native Americans because Oklahoma is sacred. We gotta keep Oklahoma exactly what it is. Like, oh, we gotta keep Florida as one country. Right? Tallahassee must be in the same political unit as Miami. Like, oh my God, like, who are you people who think this way? Like, how can anyone think this way? Like and what's maddening is that the people who are so hidebound in this way, they themselves recognize that the United States federal government does not uphold any of its traditions, that it does not uphold the Constitution. So they're trying to protect something that nobody else actually enforces. It's so stupid. Okay, I need to end the video, so I'm going to end it now.